Welcome and thank you for joining us for the 7th edition of Founder City's weekly sessions. I'm Kimmy Androlonis, Director of Operations at Baltimore. Founder City is a collaboration between Baltimore and the Frederick Innovative Technology Center aimed at bringing Maryland's entrepreneurial ecosystem a library of virtual content around all aspects of the startup journey, and a pitch competition that highlights Maryland's best and brightest. It's a place where founders can learn more about how to grow a business, perfect a pitch, and connect to other entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and investors, both in Maryland and abroad. Check out foundercity.com for more information. We have a number of sessions already posted on the site and have several more to bring you. If you are a startup based in Maryland, you can apply to pitch. Again, check out foundercity.com and register today. Today's session is focused on medical device innovation in Maryland. The life sciences sector is booming in Maryland. Innovations developed at the state's leading universities, including University of Maryland, Baltimore, University of Maryland College Park, and Johns Hopkins University, are pushing scientific discoveries to market faster than ever. University of Maryland, Baltimore alone has spun out 40 startup companies in the last 5 years, the majority of which still call Maryland home. A healthy entrepreneurial ecosystem, abundance of resources, proximity to federal agencies, trained workforce, and a high concentration of leading life science and technology firms make Maryland an ideal location for innovators and investors. Today, we have two dynamic Baltimore-based medical device entrepreneurs who will share their experiences around advancing scientific discovery, successfully raising capital, navigating regulatory compliance and approval, including recruiting talent and more. A representative of the Maryland Department of Commerce, our state's economic development agency, will also join to highlight state initiatives that are intentionally driving growth in biohealth and the life sciences. This discussion is sponsored by the University of Maryland Biopark and will be moderated by Jim Hughes, Senior Vice President and Chief Enterprise and Economic Development Officer of the University of Maryland, Baltimore. Thank you, everyone, for your involvement in today's discussion. We're grateful for what we've been able to provide to our entrepreneurial community here through Founder City in Maryland and the part that you have played in making this happen. So let's get this started. Jim, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you, Kimmy. Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you for organizing this panel and Founder City. Particularly delighted to that you are the Baltimore is teaming with the Frederick Innovative Technology Center. It's a great combination, and salute all the work that Baltimore has done and is doing throughout the years. We've got a great panel today, and I thank you for laying the foundation here so we can launch right into the panel discussion. Let me first of all introduce myself, or more my University of Maryland, Baltimore. We are located in downtown Baltimore, essentially stretching from Camden Yards up to Lexington Market on the west side of downtown. We are mostly a professional school. We have 7 schools, medicine, pharmacy, dentistry, nursing in the medical field, life sciences field, also great schools of law and social work, and an interdisciplinary graduate school. So we're unusual. Most of our students are graduate students. We have a total of about 7,000 students. The campus surrounds our very close clinical partner, the University of Maryland Medical Center. So when you combine both organizations, we have about 20,000 people working on the west side of Baltimore, having a significant impact. And we take our role as anchor institution very seriously. We are very engaged in the community surrounding the campus, very actively involved right now in the renovation of Lexington Market, and also in community activities in the communities to the west. The campus is very heavily engaged in research. This year, our schools will be awarded about $700 million in sponsored research, almost all of it in the life sciences. And this brings considerable economic development activity to the city and to Maryland. About 10% of that research is on behalf of biotech and pharmaceutical companies. So we're working right now with over 200 biotech and pharmaceutical companies based in Maryland, also throughout the US and around the world. So a lot of great commercial activities going on. We are also focused on how do we translate technologies that come about through that research into the commercial market. First of all, to bring great health sciences technologies to the market and ultimately to patients, but also to create jobs in Baltimore City and the state of Maryland. Over the past 5 years, we've founded 40 startup companies, all of whom are still in existence, and most are located in the state of Maryland. And we're very active in trying to help them grow and help them thrive. One of the major initiatives we have, and actually it's the logo on your screen, is the University of Maryland Biopark, which is a 14-acre research park. We've had $500 million of private investment to launch five buildings. We have major companies, Fortune 500 companies located there, and we also have a number of our startup companies. So we have a lot going on. We're very keenly interested in helping to build the entrepreneurial environment in Baltimore City and throughout the state of Maryland, and very keen to team with Baltimore and other organizations, and particularly state of Maryland, city of Baltimore, and most importantly, private companies. So this is an ideal panel for us because these are our people that we are very excited to work with and very honored to be a part of. So let me jump in and ask our panelists to introduce themselves. We have a couple great entrepreneurs and somebody who is very entrepreneurial at the state of Maryland. So let's start with Chibs. And Chibs, if you could talk a little bit about your personal story and what brought you to Maryland and Baltimore, and about the great company you founded, Armor.
Good night, all that. My name is Chibeze Ayanacho, or Chibs, CEO and founder of Armor Systems. So my story starts outside of Maryland, outside of Baltimore. I'm actually a Atlanta, Georgia native. And so grew up there, went to Georgia Tech, and my background is a biomedical engineer. So we were among the main inventors of our key technology, and started our story as Armor starts back in 2014, or even before that. In undergrad, I was very involved in a variety of initiatives. You mentioned research, so spent several years in the lab doing wet lab cancer research, and very, very early on kind of had a frustration with the lack of translation. I think a lot of individuals, are very smart, very, very capable, but I think that we lack leaders and individuals and organizations that can translate good ideas into sustainable things that can actively impact our environment. So while at Georgia Tech, started a few organizations really keyed in on health systems, global health. How do we, increase access to healthcare? As a first-generation Nigerian American, I'd go back to Nigeria, and summers, holidays, and so really grew up seeing that stark contrast between, hey, if you're in the wrong location, if you don't have the resources, things can go very different for you for very minor health issues. So all those kind of things built, and over time, kind of in our senior year, as part of a senior design, senior project, we kind of came upon the issue of trauma. Early on in my life, I'd got into a really, really bad car accident, so fell asleep at the wheel, went off the road 60 miles an hour, car flipped 6 times, was bleeding from the head, and kind of by God's grace, got out, walked out, and happened to do that right next to a hospital. So they were right there ready for me. It worked out. But obviously that was really impactful in my life. I've also had other friends, on the African continent and in rural areas who've gotten into situations, car accidents, motorbike accidents, and didn't make it. So those were, again, things in the background. So in 2014, when we kind of came upon the problem of kind of bleed out, we were pretty intrigued about different solutions. And so we happened to propose a new solution. And to briefly describe it in the company, I think the problem of hemorrhage is pretty known to most of us. We know the cliche story of the soldier, the warfighter, the first responder who gets injured, but kind of doesn't, expires and doesn't make it, just doesn't receive care in time. And right now, there are a lot of really conventional solutions. We might know tourniquets, your Boy Scout, Girl Scout tourniquets, kind of you put it around your arm, you tighten it, and you get to the next step. But there's a lot more in between. And right now, bleed out accounts for about 90% of all preventable death in the military. Here and domestically, it's 35% of all pre-hospital deaths. And that pre-hospital space really are due to hemorrhage. So our company, we in that time proposed a new solution. We said, hey, what if we can imagine this as a systems problem and we can create what we think of as new infrastructure? There is no go-to solution for critical hemorrhage. If something were to happen to you or I or any of us, what would we do, right? Most times for most departments, most soldiers, we make it up and we just do our best, right? So we're looking to create kind of what we think of as an AED for vascular trauma, a life jacket for vascular trauma. And the embodiment, the way it looks is we've taken vascular clamps, we've changed the form factor to apparel. So I kind of have we can probably talk about this a bit more. But the idea more or less is a warfighter or someone going into harm's way is wearing this airbag of vascular airbag going in. If something were to happen to themselves or their loved one, they could deploy the system and we treat hemorrhage anywhere on their body or do so for someone else. We've kind of done all the hard work and tell the individual on the device where to go, where to target on their body so that they can tamponade and get you, 4 or 5 hours of time before we get to the next step. So that's a bit of the technology. Our story, again, we started Armor after graduating. We had a lot of interest from generals, first responders. We weren't going to do this. I was going to go to grad school and medical school from there. But after 5 months of getting inquiries from, the medical director of Fort Hood and other folks in the community across the Southeast, we said, hey, it's just a tourniquet. Let's take a few months, dust it off, and then we'll throw it away. We'll hand it off, whatever that meant. And 7 years later, we're still here. So our company has gone from Atlanta in 2015 up to Boston. We participated in Mass Challenge, a pretty big social impact incubator for several years. We, over time, got our first contract with the Pentagon, and we're doing more business in the DMV. And we were fellows with the Halcyon program here in the region. And that time here allowed us to really kind of partner with and learn about different organizations such as TEDCO, such as the Biopark. And about 2 years later, in late 2018, our team transitioned from Boston down here. Kind of last point of getting, in terms of the story, in getting started, had no money, no experience, no military experience. So we really started just with the problem, and we said, hey, is this a good enough problem? And we kind of were pulled by the problem and by the need. In Boston, me and my co-founder, he delivered pizzas. We had one car between the both of us. I worked at a fancy kind of 4-star French restaurant, 40 hours a week. And we did that for about a year and a half, while we were trying to raise money and just getting by. Was in between a part-time graphic designer, a janitor, a lot of other things. But over 2 years, we built the product, we built the team, built the story, and that allowed us to eventually kind of get going and kind of build up the company. So that's a brief kind of highlight or preview into what we've been up to, and looking forward to being part of this discussion.
Terrific. Thank you, Chibs. We, in addition to have somebody like Chibs who came from other parts of the country to Maryland, we have Brad, who is the CEO and founder of Nextdec Robotics. And Brad, you've been in Maryland much of your life, right?
We've been in Maryland for a few generations here now. So since the potato famine, we came into Baltimore here. So, yep.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and Nextdec Robotics.
Yeah, so Nextdec Robotics we're a company that's focused on obviously a medical device, particularly in the neurorehabilitation space. And what we are developing is a robotic training system that helps gives a tool to physical therapists to help rehab stroke participants mainly, or stroke patients. It helps teach them how to regain access to their muscles so that they can improve their mobility, and even further discard some of their assistive devices and things like that. For myself, I actually started with the group that I ended up founding as an intern when I was at Towson University. I wanted to become a physical therapist. There was an internship opportunity that I took at the Baltimore VA that was working with the Maryland Exercise Robotics Center of Excellence, where we were doing stroke rehab primarily as a exercise intervention for stroke rehab. One of the things that we noticed while we were doing the exercise interventions was that there was some biomechanical limitations that stroke patients weren't able to achieve the cardiovascular gains that you or I can from exercise. And what that biomechanical limitation was something called foot drop, which is kind of the inability to raise their toe while they're walking, to get that heel first safe landing that allows them to have a safe rocker motion and have continued proper gait mechanics while they're walking. It's a safety issue. It's a economy of gait issue, and it really limits their access to their communities. So I started working with this group as an intern back in 2008, actually. So quite a little while ago, I came to our group who were some faculty members at the University of Maryland, Baltimore in the Department of Neurology, a stroke neurologist, as well as an engineer who came down from MIT, my other co-founder. And they had developed this system and this training, and I worked with them for a while and was coordinating some of the research studies that they were doing. I evolved in that role to the point where I went back to school. I got my master's in healthcare administration, got my first sense of a business class for the first time there. Kind of got the bug there, followed that up quickly with an MBA, and then started looking at, okay, we have this system that is showing to be pretty efficacious in terms of its ability to treat stroke patients in ways that is previously not thought of an opportunity for them to recover. Right now, stroke patients at 3 to 6 months after their stroke, they're told functionally this is as good as you're going to get. We were kind of proving that wasn't totally accurate. And there was room for some functional recovery through mechanisms of neuroplasticity, the brain's inherent ability to be able to adapt to very specific trainings. So while that was going on, much like Chibs, I got a little bit frustrated with the lack of translation of a great technology that was invented. We were doing kind of the research of why physical therapy was done the way it was. And it wasn't really getting out to the therapist in a way that I thought was very quick, or somewhat impatient in that sense. So I started looking into other ways that we could actually push this technology forward. That's when I was initially introduced to the entrepreneur ecosystem that's here in Maryland. And then I realized just how robust the support structures that have been stood up, not just at the university level, but at the state level, as well as private institutions like the Able Foundation in the area. So once I learned that, I decided that I would be the crazy person on our team to quit my university state position, to go full time, and raised up a little bit of co-founder money, got a grant from TEDCO, and then initially situated ourselves as an affiliate company with the Maryland Development Center, who was really focused on developing engineering projects from the university. It was a good fit. We built our first feasibility prototype in about 4 months. Went forward, did my first pitch ever to the Maryland Momentum Funding, got first money in. And now since then, we just closed on a phase 2 cooperative agreement from NIH. And now we're looking at starting recruitment for our IRB approved study at the University of Maryland Rehab and Orthopedics Institute, which will be a 3-year study that we're going to really kind of test the boundaries of efficacy for this device.
Terrific. Thank you, Brad. And Uliana Desiderio, is the Director of Life Sciences at the Maryland Department of Commerce and is very engaged, obviously, statewide in working with companies. Uliana, could you describe yourself and your work?
Thanks, Jim. Hello, everyone. I want to thank the organizers for inviting me to be part of this panel. Part of my job in the Maryland Department of Commerce is to talk about how great Maryland is, and stories like this make my job even more interesting and more exciting. So the Why Maryland story that we do here as part of the Department of Commerce kind of tells itself when you learn more about the technologies and the stories like this and the paths that people took. And I'm really glad to hear about kind of the support ecosystem that Maryland has, and that's kind of what we do here in Department of Commerce, right? As our state's economic development agency, we encourage private investment and creation of jobs by supporting businesses, the creation of businesses here in Maryland, their expansion and growth, and also the attraction of businesses, those who want to make Maryland their home, whether they're coming from other states or even internationally. So that's what we do. We have many different departments and services in Department of Commerce, but I am part of the Office of Strategic Industries that covers a handful of strategic industries for the state. And I have to say that the industries and the kind of industries that we want to grow here in Maryland are growing. So agriculture, energy, our federal partners are obviously very important. We have, as Jim said, I think about supporting the life sciences industry, and it's funny how that kind of evolves over the years and what people consider life sciences versus not life sciences. So in my world, life sciences are everything that is human adjacent, as I like to call it. So anything from biohealth, right, health and everything else all the way through technologies and devices, and certainly in some of these computational and cybersecurity and data security and anything related to human being or animal health also is as I like to say, human adjacent. So it's exciting to see different parts, different kinds of industries in our state growing and being successful. A little bit about me personally. I've been fascinated by biology since seventh grade trip to a local university. And I had a really great biology teacher who said, I think you might really like this and you should go on this field trip. So I saw an onion cell divide in a microscope. And once I saw those chromosomes on that plate, I just thought, whatever this is, whatever I'm looking at, I want to do this. So I early on chose, a very academic path and never deviated from the path, which may have been a mistake, but it is what it is. I went to college. I chose Drexel University in Philadelphia for their co-op program because as much as I liked science, I was very interested in its practical applications. And Drexel is very well known for its co-op program where you combine 6 months of classroom with 6 months of work in industry. So I did a little bit of agricultural, did a little bit of genetics research and molecular biology. So graduated undergrad with a year and a half worth of industry research and really enjoyed that kind of, knowledge gathering, but also seeing direct applications of scientific endeavors. Pursued my PhD and moved to Baltimore in 2002. Went to Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, the Department of Molecular Biology and Biochemistry. Had a great time. I thought was gonna become a PI and run my own biochemistry lab. But as we all are talking about here, I'm starting to sense a pattern. We're all kind of started wondering about, well, what happens after the discovery is made, right? What are all the pieces that have to come together, and how does it even work for it to get to human or human adjacent? So I got interested in science policy and how science is regulated and funded in the United States, and ended up doing a postdoctoral fellowship at the National Academy of Science. That is a kind of a science policy 101, and really learned about, the prioritization on our government level, both on all three branches of our government in terms of what governs science and technology, which was very eye-opening experience. So I started my career in government relations and science policy, actually, and ended up spending 10 years in Washington, D.C., never moving away from Baltimore. commuting to DC for 11 years to work for a medical association, starting again with science policy, but then growing my footprint into scientific programming. And again, this kind of private-public partnerships between scientists, regulators, funders, entrepreneurs, industry, and everything in between for all of those players to come together to do something, to make something big and put something, a product in the hands of a patient or a consumer. So when the position at the Maryland Department of Commerce opened up, and I thought, oh my gosh, what a great opportunity to come back and give back to my home state, a state that I'm so proud of. I've been here for a really long time, longer than anywhere else in my life. So this role in connecting the dots and helping our entrepreneurs succeed, grow, and not only stimulate our economy, but let's face it, at the end of the day, you are delivering product that is important to people who are waiting for it, especially when it comes to some of the life sciences products that we're talking about here. So I've been in commerce for about a year, and I'm happy to talk a little bit more about commerce later on, Jim. But it's been a great opportunity for me, and I've been loving learning about all the different industries here and the meeting entrepreneurs like we're having here on this panel. So thanks so much.
Terrific, thank you. Well, Chips, I want to ask you how your family responded when you said you weren't going to go to med school and you were doing odd jobs following your dream. That took a lot of guts, and congratulations on your success. I'm particularly curious, as somebody who came to Maryland relatively recently, and you came here from Georgia Tech and then Boston, certainly technology hotbeds. How did you find Baltimore and Maryland? Were you able to, was it a warm welcome that you received? Was it hard to break into the community? How did we treat you when you first came here?
A lot of crab, a lot more crab than I used to. It's been a cool, great kind of road here to being in Maryland and being here full time. Between 2015 and 18, when we came full time, I was here, twice a quarter, once a quarter. So finally moving, it wasn't as unfamiliar, right, as it might be. But it's been a road, right? Going from, the straight and narrow path, that was always what I wanted to do growing up. My family comes from medicine, so mom is in pharmacy, dad's a physician, very familiar with healthcare business. I think it was really important to have health systems and, wanted to be a hospital CEO, back before I knew that business model sucked. We saw the vision. I think early on, there was just a vision you can just sometimes see right through an opportunity. And, I really struggled with it, but it just was what it had to be. So really couldn't not at least take the first step. I don't know that it was a dream. I wasn't born, necessarily with the entrepreneurship bug, but looking back, I've started an organization every few years and love the translational, practical art and science. There's the creativity, the technical of that. But back to Maryland, I think, having been able to grow up in Atlanta, experience that ecosystem, the Boston environment, DC even versus Baltimore. And in New York, we have a lot of work we do in New York and manufacture there. Gives you a good perspective, right? And I think, what Brad alluded to already is very, very strong institutions here. There's a great, Baltimore is physically a smaller city, you can kind of get through it pretty quickly. And I think that reflects, there's a smallness, there's a nice community. And we kind of made our home at the Biopark, and you and Jane were among the first to interact and have us. So it's been great. We have been, I think, a bit heads down, right, since we got here. Earlier on in our journey in Boston, we were younger and just crazier and less disciplined. And so we were really out in the streets, as they say, and really networking. But here, I think we've really been heads down and working with getting connected with other PIs, right? So we're doing an upcoming study with Dr. Johnny Morrison at Vascular Trauma, and we're really excited about that. We're really looking for ways to work with partners like Brad, other companies to scale manufacturing. So it's been a warm welcome professionally. The people we've met, have been amazing. And, crab's pretty good, though I prefer lobster. So no complaints.
Good. You talked about scale up a little bit, and maybe we'll start with you and then move on to Brad. But both companies have done a nice job getting established and winning some grant money, and we'll get into investments in a moment. But just as you're beginning to turn that corner from really the fledgling early stage company into scaling up, how's that going for you, Jibs?
Yeah, it's been going great. And then I think Maryland's resources have made it possible. I don't think I underlined, big things about Maryland and the ecosystem is one, proximity. We work with, Fort Detrick, the FDA, and also great investors here locally, Able Foundation, Momentum Fund, TEDCO. So for us, it's been really, really helpful in allowing us to raise so we've done 2 note rounds, raised about $2 million, $600,000 non-dilutive, and about $2 million in contracts. And so 80% of that or 75% of that has come in the last 2 years and have been a big, made possible almost entirely, I think, by the support we've gotten locally. So now that we've had that foundation, we've been able to resource, gather, recruit really top talent from, Silicon Valley, South Korea, and elsewhere, and even here locally. We're right now at a stage where, we have a home, we have a base, we have our networks, we have our local partners, we have a research base. And our product is really, really close to being ready for showtime. We have been able to meet with the FDA for 2 pre-submissions, and so we have a plan. And so what I'm really excited about is, we're in a great base, great home, great strong partners, and we have the support, all we need, I think, to make the next step to hire more, scale to our next round. So again, we're still, we went from 2 co-founders to a team of about 8 of us, 3 full-time and kind of a shadow crew of 4 to 5 part-time. But that's a foundation that for us to then go to the next step over the next 6 months.
Terrific. And Brad, you're beginning to, I think, add some people and maybe begin manufacturing and moving on to the next phase. How's that going?
It's going great. So we have a team of 7 right now, pretty much all engineers, and myself being the one kind of non-technical person on the team. We started out, it was just myself for a couple years, along with so my co-founders were all full-time faculty members at the university. So I had to do a lot of groundwork alone initially, but then we pushed forward. One of our strong background components of being university faculty members is grant writing. So we were effective in writing a large NIH grant that turned to be a cooperative agreement that's going to fund our clinical trials and things like that. Like I mentioned earlier in my intro, we just got phase 2 funding for the clinical trial. So that means we need to expand even more. We're bringing on a project manager type position, as well as a couple other engineering hires. We are officially graduating from the Maryland Development Center, the startup studio we're in, and we'll be moving over to the Biopark in the next month or 2. So we're really excited about that. That's going to give us the space we need for expansion. We're establishing a gate laboratory in that space as part of our grant. So we're really excited to be able to offer, advanced motion analysis capabilities and things like that, not just for our grant, but hopefully to the university as a whole, actually as a service. So everything that's been great. We're developing our manufacturing capabilities early on. I like to adjust kind of our risk assessment. I'm someone that likes a little bit of risk. So when we got that large NIH grant, we went ahead and decided to take manufacturing in-house. That meant a lot of work that had to be done developing a quality management system. So we did that, have a quality management system in place, and now we're working on scaling our inventory tracking as well as assembly SOPs and things like that. So it's going good. We're looking forward to an expansion year.
Terrific. Well, and we're thrilled you're coming to the Biopark. I guess this constitutes the first public announcement of that. And I will say, to give credit to Founder City, that move was accelerated by our discussions through this, getting ready for this panel. So bringing people together does have benefits. Liliana, the state has a whole variety of programs, the biotech tax credit and other programs. Could you touch on those? And I guess from a standpoint of both helping startup companies and then companies, and there's both obviously still early stage, but companies like Armor and Nextdec that are beginning to make that transition into being strong established companies.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. It's really exciting. The state of Maryland, and particularly we've discussed here, the kind of funders and pre-seed, seed, and kind of post, and TEDCO and the funds like this have been mentioned in this conversation. There's also, in terms of, I always want to point out that the strength of Maryland, one of the huge assets, other than proximity to these right agencies, that whether that's the federal government or anything else, we also have a lot of expertise, for those founders who are coming outside, or maybe they're university adjacent, but there's a lot of expertise, whether that's in contracting with the government, or writing a grant, or let's face it, soon enough, especially for Brad, regulatory, right? So there's a lot of expertise in our state that can help companies through that path of commercialization and manufacturing, and then entering the market. So I just wanted to make sure that I didn't forget to mention that, because that's one of the expertise here in Maryland we have. In terms of the Maryland Department of Commerce programs, it's great to see companies like this grow, and they're a little early for the kind of programs that we have here in the Department of Commerce. These tax credits, Jim, that you mentioned, this is our most exciting and really popular programs that Department of Commerce offers, and they're all tied to supporting investment. Like you mentioned, the Biotech investment credit. This is a credit that gets back to the investor up to 50%, depending on where you are in the state, of their investment in the biotech company in Maryland. So when your company is growing and you're thinking and you're talking to investors, and you're growing and you're raising your next round, please think of whether you are ready to enter this program. And there are other programs that are tied to job creation. So if, as you're growing and you're hiring additional staff, when you get to closer to that 10, 20 folks number, especially in manufacturing, Brad, I was thinking that sooner or later we're going to have to talk. But we do have a lot of programs that support this kind of, especially manufacturing and also job creation. So a lot of our programs are tied to that. But I just wanted to also say that as hopefully you're growing, and eventually, as much as I'm so happy that you guys are in Biopark, one of the services that Department of Commerce provides is that eventually, if you need a bigger space in terms of location services and relocation and build out of your next facility, that's something that Commerce also can help you with, and either start this conversation with you as you're just thinking about it, or working with your broker, and make sure that we walk you through our financing programs, whether that's loans, whether that's some equipment financing, and all of those other things that have to happen for you to establish your next facility. So I'll stop there and see if you have any questions more, Jim.
Okay, thank you. And I should say, I'm not sure we told Chibs or Brad this, but once you move into the Biopark, you're in the Biopark for the life of your company. So, Chibs, Brad, did either of you, were you able to take advantage of the biotech tax credit? Did the timing work for you? Did your companies qualify?
Yeah, I've taken advantage of it 3 times now. 3 different, this year actually was for 3 different investors. So we've used it a few times. It's been a huge incentive for investors, because they look at it as essentially they're getting an investment at, a 50% off kind of deal. And helps convince them to bring it in, just like many of the other Maryland type investment opportunities. Then we also have made use of the R&D tax credit too.
Yeah, we've taken advantage of the R&D tax credit, but it was too late, when getting into Maryland. By the time we'd settled down and raised around, it already happened. So, but next time, I think that's going to be a very great incentive, I think, for, existing investors to put more money in and for new investors as well.
Terrific. And I do want to highlight the University System of Maryland created something called we call the Maryland Momentum Fund, and it's a $10 million commitment from the university system to invest in early stage companies that are affiliated with any of the USM institutions. So we have invested in 25 companies. It's a true investment with a rigorous review. So we've looked at over 300 companies and have invested in 25. I've invested a total of about $6 million, and very proud that Armor and Nextdec are both part of our portfolio. And overall, the investments have been leveraged with it's close to $45 million in other additional private investments. So that is something that we're trying to do at the university system, and it's investing in UMB companies, UMBC, College Park, Towson. I'm going to leave schools out, but universities in the Maryland system across the state, and companies located throughout the state. I'm interested. Obviously, this has been a just horrendous year, the year of COVID, and I say the year. Hopefully, it's more or less a year and not multiple years. But how has that impacted your businesses, Brad?
It has made work slow down a little bit in terms of getting supply in, supply chain issues. We've had to figure out a few things, workarounds for that, as well as just proximity. Like I said, I'm the non-technical person on our team, so we had to figure out how to have essentially 6 engineers that were working remotely, and we're dealing with, we're not a SaaS company. We're a hard engineering company. It's hardware. So figuring out a way to best coordinate our team to be able to work together on the same device, it was a challenge for sure. We did pretty well with it. Got really accustomed to Zoom quickly. Made those infrastructure investments that we needed so that our engineers had the tools that they needed to work from home and things like that. We obviously put safety of our employees at the paramount of the solution. So it's been a challenging year. This is the first year that I've felt that, that marathon. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint to create a company. And this has definitely tested that out for sure.
Chips, I know you initially were located in, well, you're still in the same space, but when you were located there, we had 3 or 4 other companies, and they all went 100% telework. So you had a lot of elbow room there. But, so that might have been nice, but how has it been?
Yeah, then it was just us. Yeah, lonely year. But I think relative to a lot of companies and a lot of people, really have struggled and suffered. I think we're pretty fortunate. But similar struggles as was referenced by Brad. Supply chain, in terms of we would kind of have a machine shop, do jobs externally or getting other supplies. All of that just kind of stopped, and it was delayed +4 months, +3 months. Some in-person clinical or human factors trials on base with some bases, all bases shut down. Personnel movement was limited. So we had some of those kind of delays, but it did open up, and also having all the elbow room at Biopark gave us more space, more time to, again, put our heads down. We have a pretty, very simple concept. It's a very challenging, deep tech, device that we're working on. So it did allow us to really put our heads down and develop new systems and implement a quality management system and get more sophisticated. But we didn't have as a hardware company, we didn't have the benefit of 100% remote work. And so we've been doing kind of informal in-person, on-person testing for about 11 months now. And at times we'd have to drive to volunteers' homes. Everyone's masked up, triple hand sanitizer. I mean, we're taking our apparatus across the street, here and there to users to get the work done and get the data, right? And so, it was a risk that all of our team voluntarily assumed, but it was tough. And we really kind of speaks to, I think, the dedication of our team and our volunteer community of soldiers, warfighters, first responders. So, we had to improvise, but we got through. I think we're much stronger, much more efficient. With the delays, speaking towards fundraising and cash, when things are delayed, you have money for 12 months, 18 months, whatever. And so, dead time is kind of dead time, right? And so we saw going into a Q4 board meeting, hey, we only had 6 more months of cash. That wasn't good. We were supposed to do 30 things by now, but the environment was the environment. So it really made us get scrappy, get really efficient. So we've cut costs tremendously. We got really aggressive with non-dilutive capital, raising about $400,000 in the last quarter alone of just non-dilutive. And so it brought out some efficiencies in our team that I think will carry forward.
Curious if either of you have ever turned down investor money or turned down a grant. That might have been particularly tough in the past year to do that. But are there times when you say, that's just not an investor who's a good fit, or a grant that's taking us in the wrong direction? How do you, if you have made those decisions, how do you make that kind of decision, particularly when you are looking at cash burn and keeping the doors open and you all have payrolls to meet? Any challenges there or not?
We did turn down one investment. That it was a very tough decision, and it was a long-term decision as opposed to a short-term decision. It was based around our ability to manufacture, and making that decision to pull manufacturing in-house. It was non-dilutive funding is incredibly important, and we were so fortunate that we got our cooperative agreement was $5.5 million. So that allowed us to really look at, when we were raising a small round, what it would take to bring manufacturing in-house and really keep costs down of manufacturing. That one of our core kind of values that we are putting forward is we want to get this robotic technology into PT's hands, and in order to do so, we know that we have to come in at a price that's affordable, and keeping manufacturing in-house we saw as an opportunity to do so. So we did turn down one manufacturing type of investment, that so far it's worked out for us. We built that quality management system that we had intended to, and we're pushing forward. But it's a tough decision, for sure. It's not something that you sleep on for one night.
Yeah, no, yeah, we aren't as saintly. I think we had a situation where we had a strategic distributor who wanted to make a strategic 6-figure investment and get some exclusivity. And I didn't say no. I just said not now. So we'll keep talking. So that's kind of our approach. It's like keep that thought, keep that same energy. Let's talk in 6 to 12 months. You got to balance that, right? Make sure do things at the right time. My dad says first things first, so we're making sure attend to your short-term and long-term priorities and values. But I think as entrepreneurs, we got to be flexible and keep opportunity and resource. Don't take it for granted, So that's kind of how we've balanced a similar situation.
Great. Yeah, good. Juliana, going back to COVID, I know, it's been an interesting year for the life sciences and COVID. Obviously, there have been billions of dollars invested in life sciences, a good chunk of that in Maryland. So some companies are really expanding very, very quickly, and then others are not in the direct line of Operation Warp Speed. And I know Commerce has also played a role in distributing federal funding to small businesses. What's your thought on how the last year's been and how we start transitioning, hopefully, into a post-pandemic world?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I actually onboarded AdCommerce completely remotely. So that to me, it's been an interesting thing firsthand to experience is starting a new job, right? With a new team. I think you know, I've definitely heard from some companies that, especially those who are fundraising actively, if you've started those conversations right before the pandemic, it's almost like I heard somebody say this in another webinar, and I don't remember whom to reference properly, but I thought it was really funny. It's like those of us who are engaged already, it was kind of easy to just keep going with the deal. But those of us asking for a first date, that was a harder pull for a lot of companies. But I agree with you, Jim. I think the life sciences, especially the biologics, right, community has done really well here in Maryland, and it's because of our historic strength and expertise in infectious diseases. I will say that a lot of companies that were manufacturing other things have pivoted to manufacture PPE, especially very early on in the pandemic. And our manufacturing kind of network just set up online, online markets, and talk to somebody. It's like, how, where are you getting this and where are you getting that? And I'm curious if either of you guys participated in the kind of CEO roundtable that the Maryland Tech Council runs. It's the business continuity task force where, weekly or biweekly, people will just get together and saying, okay, what's happening in your company? How are you getting this? How are you getting your people safely in? How are you staggering, right? When everybody was just figuring it out. In terms of Department of Commerce, Jim, you're right. The department has distributed tens of millions of dollars to small businesses, regardless of industry. So that's, some of these were loans that, or grants, or forgivable loans. And, we've heard a lot of stories from businesses who wouldn't otherwise made it. I think, the payroll, right? You just have to get through the payroll. You don't want to lay off people. So I think all in all, I want to make sure that, we've been celebrating a lot of Maryland companies who've been contributed to the response to pandemic and just kind of building resiliency for future ones. But let's not forget everybody else who just kept working. Like you guys here, and you just kept working. People who are in oncology space kept working because patients are waiting. And maybe they weren't in the news as much, but it was important. There was a lot of important milestones that our industry, whether that's biologics or devices, diagnostic devices not related to COVID, have done a lot of important things. So I want to make sure that as we were going through this year, and I was like, well, yeah, so let's make sure that we celebrate everybody's successes, because it's been harder for everybody. Although, judging by at least if you follow the money, 2020 has been banner year in terms of investment, both federal and private, into Maryland industry, period. Just outside of biologics even, Jim.
Great. I have a million more questions, but maybe I just ask a final question of Chibs and Brad, really asking you to put Juliana and myself on the spot. So what can government do? What can the state of Maryland do? What can the University of Maryland do? What either ways that we've been impediments or ways that we're just not answering a need? What can we do for you?
I'll let Brad go. He's smarter.
Oh man. Yeah. So I think one of the things that I've seen, as I've done a lot of my recruitment for employees and everything in the Maryland system. I'm actually making a new hire now from outside the state. And one of the things that was really attractive was his program built in kind of entrepreneurship, and the whole concept of what a product is from the beginning. So I don't know if there's a way. I know MTech and some others have those types of programs, but really to try to kind of make it more ingrained into the fabric of our ecosystem of, okay, this is research, and it has a purpose, and of course there's mechanistic research and things like that. But what is the end goal? of the research? How do you take that research and get it from clinic to bedside? What does bedside look like? To really encourage, not just our faculty research and everything, but starting at the student level, to start that thought process from the very beginning of, okay, well, when you develop something, when you're an engineer, you need to figure out user needs. This is a really cool engineering project, but is it useful? Kind of asking those questions of beyond whether or not you could and more in the whether or not you should type of questions. And how does it look when it actually gets into the hands of an end user? And how are they going to pay for it? Being in a medical device space, incorporating the regulatory component and making sure that from a research standpoint, we understand, okay, there's going to be regulatory components. There's going to be a payer system if it's a therapeutic or a device. How can you involve CMS, Center for Medicare and Medicaid, early on? Because those are all things that are going to help translate all research that we do into technologies and therapeutics that actually get to the clinic and help people.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Chips? I think I got two challenges or two things I'd offer up, which I think aren't surprises from our journey to the Biopark and to Maryland. So one is, and I've seen this with a few companies who have transplanted. I think there's a new Boston-based company who some Baltimore natives were working and commuting to Boston, and now the whole company is moving from Boston and to the space with us in the Biopark. But I think there could be more done. I think we could all get better at tying in companies to the local ecosystem from a recruitment standpoint, right? So you get here, you want to hire local, you want to understand that talent pipeline. We've struggled with that. We're not as networked and familiar with the university system, for instance. And I've seen them. We were just talking about this last week with Steven, their CTO. And so I think there can be more of a bridge, I think, between new companies looking to get familiar with the tech talent landscape and also to recruit internationally. We've recruited internationally to come here, having help or being able to provide information to incoming companies about how to socialize and how their teams can socialize and move in is helpful. And I think even vice versa, I've heard, Brad, you kind of referenced this, you've recruited locally mostly, but, providing a counter bridge to local companies to expand the reach, in the region, on this coast, nationally to recruit. I think the more that the state or institutions, Biopark, some respected institutions, I think, have a role to play in creating that reverse talent pipeline for existing companies to pull talent in, and for new companies to connect and kind of make roots. The other thing is community, right? So obviously we're living through and have lived through a year of pandemic, but I think having institutions that I think one role of kind of big, respected, smart people like yourselves is to gather, is to commune, right? So I think before I did go and attend a few Anchor Ventures discussions and events, but I think more of that, and I know Baltimore and all the institutions on this call, are really involved in that. But the more of that, I think the better. The active mixing, the active promotion, I think always helps and enriches the ecosystem. So those are things we're looking forward to, is setting roots and just kind of getting at home and getting connected with other companies with synergies and just the community socially. So
Terrific. Well, thank you. That's great advice. We are eager, obviously, to get back where we can gather in person and have a whole series of vibrant activities. As I think all of you have said, we've adapted pretty well to Zoom, but you lose a lot. So it'll be nice when we can probably won't lose the electronic calls, but in person. Looking forward to getting back to that. But thank you for building your companies in Baltimore and Maryland. Thank you for just on also being actively engaged in the community. I know both of you are frequently mentors to other companies and are eager to reach out and talk to college students and to spend that time. So really appreciate it. And Juliana, I'm just so delighted that you brought all of your expertise and talent to the state of Maryland's Department of Commerce, and you're now in a position to help companies across the state. So I'd like to again thank Baltimore and the Frederick Innovative Technology Center for putting together Founder City, working together, and for allowing us to do this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.